Welcome to Thursday's edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live here on Giants.com as well as the mobile app. He's Jonathan Casillas. I'm Lance Medow with you for the next 60 minutes. Some news in terms of practice today. The Giants actually canceled their practice today, unfortunately, due to the air quality, which obviously is the wise move. And it looks as if the Giants probably are not going to be practicing tomorrow either. Brian Daboll seemed to indicate they want to wait till hopefully this clears out of the New York, New Jersey metropolitan area. And then they'll obviously have mandatory minicamp next week. But the three coordinators did speak to the media before they canceled practice, so we'll give you some of our takeaways from that standpoint and an opportunity for you to weigh in as well at 201-939-4513. You could also hit us up on Twitter, #GiantsChat. And a reminder, you can find the archive of this show and our entire podcast network on the Giants mobile app, podcast platforms everywhere, and at Giants.com/podcast. So if you have not been able to locate this podcast, that's on you for not looking hard enough. I'm glad we got some clarity. And as far as the coordinators are concerned, I think there's a few different things that we could delve into. I'm curious, though, Jonathan, your perspective on one thing that Wink Martindale brought up, and that's where I want to start, because he was asked about a favorite topic of the fan base, the media, the green dot. I mean, where would we be as a society if we didn't overanalyze who has the green dot on their helmet and how that is going to impact the defense? And he indicated, hey, there's about 5 guys they're testing out. And you can, I think, shed a lot of light on this, obviously, since you played on the defensive side of the ball. He seemed to indicate the media narrative is the player that wears the green dot is the leader on the defensive side of the ball. Wink argues it's not necessarily the case. It's more of the guy that can best communicate with the rest of the unit, and that doesn't mean that just because you're not wearing the green dot, you can't be a leader within the locker room and outside of the locker room. So I'm curious your perspective, because everybody's saying, well, wait a minute. I thought McKinney's coming back. He's going to be the guy. Wink says they'll see. At least they're testing the waters out at this stage of the offseason.
Yeah, so you guys that don't know what the green dot signifies, it's the one guy on the field, offense or defense, that's getting the offensive defensive call from the coordinator. And that green dot is on the top of the helmet, and that signifies that they have electrical equipment in their helmet to receive,
Can you break down the wiring in the helmet first?
No.
You can't take it that far?
I'm just telling them what the green dot means.
I was hoping you'd delve into that, but we'll survive.
And, and that's usually, like you said, that's the guy that's receiving the information. We're going to go defense. That's receiving the defensive call from the defensive coordinator, and then they're communicating the call to the rest of the defense, right? Traditionally, it's the Mike linebacker, right? It's the middle linebacker. I've worn a green dot several times in my career, and I never really liked it.
Really? You didn't like it?
No.
See, I would have thought you would like to set the stage.
No. So for me, not to say I can't, because that's like you're the captain of the defense, right? Sure. But that doesn't mean you run everything. But that means you're getting that communication in, and you're the first line of communication to the defense from the defensive coordinator.
Yeah.
And I did it a couple times in New England, and I did it when I was here in New York, my first year in New York, when we really didn't have that steady middle linebacker that on nickel and dime packages. And I was the guy that ended up for that second half of the season playing that nickel or dime middle linebacker. For me, it wasn't a natural position for me. And that's because of concepts of route concepts. I'm usually playing on a weak side or strong side. So I'm usually seeing like
makes sense
2-1 or 3-2. This one was 3-2 or 2-3. Like it was always in the middle of the field. And for me, I wasn't comfortable with that. Not just the aspect of having a green dot and getting communication out, but it's just something that I wasn't accustomed with. And I was a captain my second and third year for the New York Giants, so I was definitely one of, if not the leader of the defense, but I didn't call the defense my last 2 years in New York, and I was okay with that. I'd rather communicate everything else, down and distance, personnel, motion here, communicate to the defensive front. And like you were saying, without the green dot, that doesn't mean you're not a leader. That doesn't mean you're not a communicator. The great thing about all great defensive teams are the level of communication throughout all 11 guys, even from the coordinator. So you got one guy communicating the call, but everybody else should be talking. The defensive back should be talking about down and distance. They should be looking at the receivers, splits, and then also the linebackers. They need to be communicating to that defensive line about their fronts, about gaps. big gaps, run downs, first and second down, high hats if they look low, like the linemen are looking low, like they're leaning forward. Like there's a lot of communication that happens.
Well, they're picking up on things that other players may not.
So for me, I loved being that guy, the guy that communicated everything else. I'm not waiting for the defensive coordinator. I'm sitting there looking at the offense, and I'm like, okay, backs wide. It's 3rd and 1. This might be a run play. Or watch the draw, alert the draw, 2nd and long. You know what I mean?
Yep.
That was my job, and I really grasped that. And I think I flourished in that role and not having the green dot. The green dot, for me, it was like an experiment, and I was like, Spags, I don't want to do that no more. But it's very crucial to have that green dot guy be a great communicator, be a great leader, be a guy who is very intelligent about not just the defense, but offensive schemes, offensive situations, defensive situations, down and distance. Like, this guy has to be a very knowledgeable guy, a great communicator, and Xavier McKinney did a great job of that. And I think, maybe it's just me, he was the guy to do it because they didn't really have a linebacker that they knew was going to be on the field every play like Xavier McKinney.
And that's key, Jonathan. I didn't mean to cut you off. Wink even emphasized this. You're never going to give the green dot to a player that you're going to take off the field on 3rd down.
You can't do it.
Yeah.
That's the most crucial down, when you talk about 1st, 2nd, and 3rd down. So you got to have that guy on the field at all times. So with a Karake coming in here, I think that gives, the defense a chance to having that traditional middle linebacker with the green dot on his helmet. We'll see. Because I don't see a fault, anything wrong with Xavier McKinney having the green dot. It's just something different, but safeties are always communicators. Safeties have to communicate to the corners. They have to communicate to the linebackers because they're in charge of coverages, right? You can't have a corner doing it because they're only on one side of the field. The safety, they can see every single person.
Everything else is in front of them.
Right. Yeah. All 21 other guys on the field. So they're seeing the offense, they're seeing the defense, they're seeing motions and all that stuff. So I don't see it as being a bad thing at all. But, it is a far way back, sometimes, especially because Xavier's playing, middle free, which is like that's the deepest the safety's going to line
He's
up.
He's like an ocean away.
He's a little bit away from that defensive tackle, right?
Yes, for the line
and the linebackers being 4 or 5 yards behind the line and being 10 yards max, 15 yards max away from the safeties, he can turn around and do it. So it has, I think, its advantages for middle linebackers, but then also with the safety having the middle dot, which is Xavier McKinney being knowledgeable about the defense, about offenses, being that he is a great communicator. He never takes his eyes off the offense because he's always looking forward. Middle linebacker communicating to the safety, sometimes you might have to turn around.
Of course, yeah.
So like little stuff like that.
And you may miss something, a change at the line of scrimmage or something like that.
A slight movement.
Subtle.
100%.
Yeah.
So I do see advantages of a safety having the green dot, but then, of course, the linebacker, I feel like traditionally that was the guy that had a green dot for most defenses.
Now, with that being said, though, I do like the logic of you're in the offseason. You never know if somebody's going to get hurt, right? McKinney went down last season. So Wink all of a sudden went into the year thinking, all right, McKinney's going to be the green dot helmet guy the entire year. All of a sudden he gets hurt. So this is the time of the year you prepare accordingly, Jonathan, right, for other guys to get comfortable. Because I think what's also important to note is you could have multiple players have the helmet, but only one guy at a time on the field can actually communicate with the coordinator. So you can't have like 3 guys with the helmet. It can only be one at a time, but somebody else could have the helmet prepared in case somebody in the midst of a game gets hurt. So I like the logic of, all right, you got 5 guys, let's test the waters. Let's see if Bobby Okereke can handle that. And when Bobby spoke to the media, I think it was about a few weeks ago, he indicated he has experience with Indianapolis. He's wore the green helmet. Julian Love was a guy that you could bring in last season. Unfortunately, he's not in the equation. So, do you go to a guy like Dane Belton? Do you say, all right, hey, year 2, let's see what he can bite off? Because I think those are the players that come to mind that are versatile enough that you figure are going to be on the field just about every single down this season.
Yeah, and I think that the main thing is who's going to be playing 99% of the defensive
100%.
snaps, right? Who's going to be on the field? And there's several guys that fit that qualification from the safety and linebacker room. Okereke, Dane Belton, if he's a starter, he's definitely a guy that's wearing that green dot right now at practice, right? At practice, you can have as many guys as possible.
Yeah, there's no limitation. I was just referring to
practice.
Games. Yeah.
You know, but the funny thing is, I remember the first time, I think I was in New England when they brought the green dot helmet out for me. They took Hightower and Jamie out. And then it was like, all right, JC's going to get the green dot. I'm like, I don't have anything in my helmet. Yeah. They're like, oh, no. So I go to the sideline to the equipment guys, and it's like, it was like they're holding like I don't know, special like military, you know what I'm saying, equipment. You know, it's like they had security guards around it.
Oh, boy.
And they open it up, and it's like, it's a box. You know what I'm saying?
They pull out the helmet. It's like out of a movie. Was there a coronation? Did they play music and lay out the red carpet
and I had
for you?
to go on one knee. They had to touch each shoulder.
The sword came out.
They had to put it over my head.
I like it. Fantastic,
They keep all the green dot helmets in a special place. In a special case on the side. And so if you are a guy that's eligible or you're a guy that's been working with the green dot, they have another helmet exactly like the one you never wore before, exactly like the one you're wearing in the box on the side. And then if you get thrown in the game, you have to switch helmets, right? Unless you're going to just do all hand signs and verbal communication. But trust me, if you don't want to be doing that, you don't want to be doing the hand signals and you're staring over there at the sideline.
Like, I have no idea what
the offense is getting lined up and you're like, oh, come on, coach, get the sign in. You know, that's why the green dot's been so successful, because you can look at the offense that's coming out and you're hearing the defense. And you can be like, all right, coach, I got you.
Yep.
You know, so the green dot, I think, is it's been a game changer for communication in the NFL. You know, and
beautiful thing, technology.
Having a safety do it is a little different, but I see a lot of advantages of it. Xavier McKinney, who's a guy who's a tremendous ball player, a leader on his team, getting that call in from the defensive coordinator and getting it out to the defense, because he's never going to take his eyes off the offense.
I'm told that the reason why they have all of those helmets guarded is it breaks the budget if you lose a few of those. So you got to be cautious, Jonathan. I'm just giving you,
I mean, they were finding guys when I played 10K if they lost their playbook. So I'm thinking that's what, 50K probably?
There you go. You know, and you would think you could go to the printer and get a new playbook, right? Okay. You know, something tells me the copy machine will function. Mm-hmm. That won't break open the piggy bank. The ink 50K. Cartridge, You have to all of a sudden go to the manufacturer and, you know, guys and gals are twisting wires inside the helmet. Okay? You know, what you put those individuals through, I don't think you truly understand why, you know, all of a sudden they have to make sure that they're on guard with respect to that. No, but I do appreciate you breaking down the ins and outs, and I'm sure our viewers and listeners feel the same way, because I just found it interesting when Wink was talking today. They were sort of pressing him, and he was like, listen, it's no big deal. Relax. Calm down. We can have 6 guys now.
I'm about to say, did he have a number? Was it 6 guys?
He said no. He said 5 guys they have working with the green dot helmet.
So who you think? We got it. Of course, Xavier McKinney. You thinking Dane Belton? That's 2.
I'm thinking Dane and Bobby Okereke.
Bobby Okereke. That's 2.
Correct. And Okereke admitted
a definite
too.
3. Okay. That's a definite 3. Who's the other guy? Is there maybe 2 more linebackers? Maybe Davis and
bringing up the roster
and
here.
Beavers possibly?
Beavers, I think, is a good one. I'll throw out another interesting player. I was going to get to this. When Wink was asked about the progression of the linebackers, he threw out, without being asked, which I found interesting, he threw out Micah McFadden's name.
Okay. Had quality snaps last year.
Correct. Could they be expanding his role? Micah, to me, I'd put him in the wild card category for the green dot helmet. I'm just looking over my depth chart here.
Also, when you look at linebackers, Okereke is the guy. There's no other guy that's going to get the green dot besides him. But if Okereke goes down, or if he's not playing on certain packages, you have to have a guy in there. Like if Bobby Okereke, let's say he plays 80% of the snaps a game, right?
Yeah,
I don't know if they're gonna have another guy with the green dot. I think they might signal in because of the change of.
Okay.
Because if you think about it, like let's say, because Bobby Okereke is not a big guy, I expect him to play on passing situations 100% of the time, right? But then it might be a chance during the season, maybe halfway through the season, where you realize Beavers and Davis are better first and second down backers, or run down 3rd and 1, 4th and 1, you know, big offensive personnel where they're bringing in tight ends and extra linemen. You know, he's not a bigger guy. He may be suited to be a backup in that regard, and you have another linebacker in playing in that down. I don't think they're going to switch that dot out. You know what I mean? I think they're going to signal in
for the play that he's not on the field. That makes sense.
You know what I mean? But if he goes down, now you have to have someone else. So who's the plan B? Because I think as of right now, let's say Xavier McKinney and Okereke is plan A and plan A-B, right? A1 and A2. How about
1A
that?
and 1B.
1B,
sure.
right.
Yes, we got there.
Right.
It was the convoluted road we took, but we got there.
Right,
Yes.
and then, so who is the alternate guy at each position?
So my response is I'm going to go still with McFadden is the backup to Okereke, and then I would go with Dane Belton being the backup to McKinney.
Okay.
Another guy I want to throw out, and I'm curious your perspective, what about Bobby McCain?
Okay.
But the problem with McCain is I could see being a slot corner / safety. So does that worry you? Because you were talking about if you're going to give somebody the green dot, he needs to see the whole field. If you have plays where McCain goes into the slot, now all of a sudden he's close to the line of scrimmage, that perhaps eats into his ability to set the defense.
I think it depends what position he's actually playing. You know, like if one of the safeties goes down and now McCain is the starting safety, I think that keeps him valid. But if he's basically the third corner, which is the nickel or fourth corner, a guy that's moving around a lot, I don't think you could give it to him.
So I think that's what we're talking about. I mean, I don't think they're going to the degree where they're worried about the third guy. I would hope that at some point,
no, I mean, but you have to worry about
accordingly.
Because if McKinney and Okereke go down, that's the third guy now.
Correct. Well, and that's where, to me, Dane Belton and McFadden come into play, and then McCain could be your third option. I mean, we just named 5 guys right there. So I would think that
out of the 5, right? Yeah. I would think so. And for linebackers, you got Okereke is definitely number 1. You're thinking McFadden because McFadden backs up Okereke.
Correct. And then Beavers could be.
See, but I'm thinking one of the Beavers or Davis because I have in my head, I'm thinking Okereke. And he's of course the middle linebacker, and the other middle linebacker would be Davis or Beavers, right?
Sure.
And I think those are the top 3 linebackers. So hear me out. If Okereke goes down, I think Beavers steps up if he's not the starter. I think Davis, if he's not the starter, steps up over McFadden.
I just wonder.
You know what I'm saying?
No, I get it. My concern about Davis is how much is he on the field for third down?
Right.
I guess that's my question. Like Beavers, I could see staying on the field for third down. I mean, he proved that in college.
Yep. I mean, he had some good plays last year in passing situations as well.
Exactly. Yeah, and McFadden, it was just interesting when Wink brought him up, and once again, no one asked him specifically. You know, sometimes you ask a coach who stood out. It's early. I don't want to get into it. Right. Because they asked Mike Kafka something similar, and he gave the, well, time will tell. But Wink passionately threw out Micah McFadden's name.
Okay.
So, and that was around the ballpark of the question about the green dot. It just got me thinking. And once again, I could be completely reading too much into this.
No, I don't think so.
This is the time of the year when we do that.
Look, I don't think so. At the end of the day, the guys that play are the guys that the coaches trust, right?
Absolutely.
And then you add another trust level factor into that when you talk about the green dot, you know, because at the end of the day, you got to really trust that guy is getting out that call to the other 10 guys in the field.
Well, he's your conduit.
He's it.
He can't do that.
He's it. You know,
that's trouble.
That has a level of trust and accountability when you wear that green dot. And if he's mentioning him in the likes of that conversation, then that means he trusts that guy. And that means Micah McFadden's role this year is probably going to be increased.
And to add an extra layer to this conversation, continuity was a big theme in the conversation, but we talked about that this offseason, meaning Kafka, Martindale are back. It's the same scheme. They can communicate faster. And remember, you and I did a show several weeks back. You were talking about the different levels of language when all of a sudden you returned for year 2. But there was another great line that Wink had to say, and I'm curious if this relates to teammates you've been around. So he was asked about the run defense improving with the addition of some of the big boys up front on the defensive line, specifically A'Shawn Robinson and Nacho. So he says, guys like Aaron Donald and Warren Sapp, and I'm paraphrasing, so I apologize to Wink if I'm butchering his quote, but I'm giving you the gist of it. He goes, guys like that were touched by God twice.
Yeah, I hear that.
Okay? A'Shawn Robinson and Nacho, no disrespect to them, they were touched by God once, which I thought was a fantastic line. And it wasn't him taking a shot. He was just saying, listen, as long as those guys come in, they stick to their assignments. They help collapse the pocket with decks, right? It's not so much sacks. It's Jonathan getting the quarterback off his spot, which is something you can relate to. Mission accomplished. That's what he wants out of those 2 guys in particular. But they're not coming in thinking A'Shawn Robinson and Nacho are going to give you, 10 sacks combined, which, let's face it, would be unheard of. It'd be career years for the 2 of them. But it's the idea of if you collapse the pocket, now maybe Azeez and Kayvon can eat. And if you can break through a hole, you get a hit on the initial stage of the defense, because you go back to the run defense last season, Jonathan, and this is something that I think you could shed some insight in, having played middle of the defense. You don't want the guys to go untouched to the second level of the defense, right?
That's terrible.
You want to get the hit early. There were a lot of times, and you and I watched a lot of games together, there was no hit coming once the running back got through the first hole. That's where you hope guys like Nacho and A'Shaun Robinson come into play.
Yeah, and when you talk about Wink's defense, he's a very aggressive defense, right? He's sending a lot of guys.
You don't say, yes.
Pass blitzes, and they have run blitzes. Similar Spagnuolo, when you had Landon Collins, he wasn't really a linebacker, but he was, because we sent him a lot on blitzes on run situations. So he was always basically added into the front. The great thing about that is, instead of having a 7-man front, you have an 8-man front, and that basically keeps everybody on single blocks. It kind of keeps the double teams away from the better players.
Makes sense.
Damon Snacks Harrison. Damon Snacks Harrison had 90 tackles at D tackle, right? He was a guy that he was a monster.
Oh yeah.
But if you you left him alone, and he made my job so much easier, you had to learn how to play with a guy like that. And I put him in the likes of J.J. Watt, because they're unconventional guys. Those guys, they get reached on purpose. They swim run plays, which is like, that's like, you don't do that. You can't, you getting out of your gap. But guys like that create havoc. They mess up everything. They just trash the
disruptor,
whole front.
Essentially.
That's exactly what they are. That's Dexter Lawrence, right? So if you have other guys that are just doing their job, they're just holding down their gaps, that means Dexter Lawrence could be a lot more free in what he does, because he's probably one of those guys that's been touched by God twice. You know what I'm saying?
I was going to ask you. Okay, so we're classifying Dex is the two hands by God.
Let me tell you something.
What about Snacks? Was Snacks a two hand?
I think so.
Okay.
You know, and look, I played with Snacks. I had knee issues. Snacks had one knee. His knee was so bad, and you would never know that because the guy was getting after it every week. He was a guy, I think he was 350 pounds, bro. Over 350.
With room for additional snacks.
Yeah, right. You know, but the way he caused havoc is very similar to Dexter Lawrence. I don't think Dexter Lawrence is going to get those numbers in terms of 90 tackles, 80-something tackles.
Yeah.
But the disruptive force that he is, that checks that box. You know what I mean? And when you have other guys that can just do their job, not get beat, not get pushed out of their gap, just hold their gaps down, that makes the whole defense that much better. Now you're adding in an extra safety. That creates chances for these guys to win their one-on-one blocks, because if they decide to go ahead, we got to double Dexter Lawrence on every play, when the Giants add an extra guy into the box, they're probably going to have a free runner, right, to hit the ball carrier.
Yep.
So now they're going to scheme away from the free runner. So now you have to win your one-on-one blocks. And if these guys can do that, they will have phenomenal years. Not because of all of them and their work, but because of the scheme, and then also Dexter Lawrence's presence in the middle. Because you have to account for him. Like Aaron Donald, when you play the Rams, if you don't know where he is, I'm telling you right now, he's going to destroy the play. I feel the same way about Dexter Lawrence. If you don't know where he is and you're running something in the middle, it's not happening. You got to put 2 bodies on him, if not 3 bodies on that guy.
An unpleasant surprise it will become
if
you don't know where he is.
Yes, and he is a disruptor. He's kind of taking the team, and I watched him win games for the Giants last year. So add those guys in, Nachos and A'Shaun
Robinson. Yeah.
A'Shaun, add those guys in, very capable guys that have great experience in the NFL. They're going to have, I think, their better years this year because of the defense that Wink runs and the role that they're going to be playing. They're not going to be asked to take on double teams. They're going to have a lot of single blocks the whole entire game, and they're going to win those. I think so. I think that I think the Giants right now, I think they were giving up 5.5 yards per carry last year on the ground.
In that ballpark, yeah.
I think they can drop that by a whole yard. I think
that would be significant.
Under 5 yards because of not only just the guys that they have, but the scheme that Wink runs. I think they're going to do a lot better job on those run plays on first and second down, and I think all around the defense is going to be a lot better because of the depth now along the defensive line, and then also Dexter Lawrence's presence. He's going to demand a double team. Maybe he didn't do it early in the year last year, but this year, in the beginning of the year, he's one of the guys that you're circling on that first meeting of the week when you go play a team. He's gonna be the first guy to say, Dexter Lawrence, we have to know where he is at every single play.
And that's what happens when you're coming off a 7.5 sack season. And to your point, you were talking about so many games where he helped win them the contest. I mean, think about him getting a push and then putting his hand up and deflecting the ball and breaking up a pass. I think at the end of the Green Bay game, remember when they had that goal line defensive stand against Aaron Rodgers? Dexter was very much involved in that. So the point is well taken. Coincidentally, it's funny, we were bringing up Aaron Donald. Ashawn Robinson was a teammate of his with the Rams. So Robinson was doing the same thing to open up opportunities for Donald, vice versa. And that is, I think, exactly what Wink was talking about. The expectations of bringing in those guys to do the dirty work. And this is why, and this is something you've seen also from playing with a lot of guys. The box score doesn't tell the whole story for a lot of players, especially defensive linemen, the interior guys of all.
Right, for sure.
Good luck.
I mean, but even on the rushers on the outside, because you remember halfway through the year, Kayvon Thibodeau didn't have no sacks. But he was like leading the league in pressures almost.
No, that's fair. Yeah.
He was definitely impacting the passing game. He had a lot of TFLs, but the sack numbers weren't there. So you're like, what's happening to him? He's young. He was hurt. You know what I mean? He's a step slower than he probably was the year before.
Yeah.
So like you said, the box score is not always an indicator on the guy having success. And I think that's why you can't just base, a guy's success every year off of numbers alone. You got to watch the film.
No, and I'm completely with you. I think Kayvon's a good example. To me, a little bit lower on the disrespect poll is the interior defensive lineman.
Oh,
because
yeah.
The edge guys, I would say, Jonathan, you could get maybe a quarterback hit here or there, so you acknowledge, okay, they've been active. I mean, sometimes those interior defensive linemen, you look at the box score, 3 tackles, nothing else. Yeah, but what about what they opened up for their teammates?
Right.
Because the offensive line had to account for a guy like Snacks, for example, because
100%.
Snacks was not a big sack guy.
Nope. He was a big tackle guy, but not a big
tackle guy, but he got sacks.
I mean, like you said, you turn on that film and you watch my tackles for losses. Where are they coming? They're coming off of Snacks' butt. Because Snacks got so much penetration, and I'm like blitzing on run plays because I know Snacks is going to hold it down. And JT Thomas, right? He was also a weak side linebacker / middle
former
linebacker.
Jaguar too, I believe.
Right. When I was in New York, JT, I remember yelled at Snacks one practice, or matter of fact, we was watching film and he was upset.
Well, now we're getting to the juicy stuff. Here we go.
Snacks was like in the gap we were supposed to be in. He was like, man, Snacks can't do that. And he was actually out the year before because he was hurt.
I remember that.
And I looked at JT, I was like, I said, bro, let him do what he does. You
weren't on the field last year.
You did,
Relax.
Right, exactly. Bro, you didn't play with this guy last year.
Sure.
At the end of the day, as a linebacker, you're correcting these guys' mistakes. And not only that, you're playing off of them. That's more importantly. Not only are you correcting their mistakes, but you're just playing off of them. So if you're supposed to be having the front side A gap and Snacks takes your front side A gap, you better believe if you hit that thing and hit his A gap, the ball's going to be right there. It's going to be right there. So you just have to learn how to play with these, like you said, disruptors that are in front of you. And because I don't think a Carrick is going to come in and him and Dexter Lawrence are going to play very well together right away because he has to learn.
He's got to get a feel for it.
That Dexter Lawrence is one of those guys that's been touched by God twice. He's going to do things that probably nobody else have done that he's seen do. And you're going to be like I remember watching J.J. Watt, right? And he was a Wisconsin guy, but let me tell you the story about J.J. J.J. was a tight end when I was in Wisconsin. He was a tight end.
It. Yeah, sure.
He was a scout team tight end. And then when I left, he ended up going to D-tackle, D-end, and then when he got to the league.
He was inspired by you playing on the defensive side.
Yes. He started doing things that were so like, what are you doing? Why would you do that? And I'm talking about on run plays, you have to hold down your gap. He would swim and backdoor run plays, but he would hit it 4 yards in the backfield for a tackle for loss.
Jeez.
But that lineman is up on the linebacker. So that takes a linebacker completely out the play. But when you have guys that can do stuff like that and win, you got to let them do it. You can't coach that because that's not coached like that. You coach a guy out of that. You say, bro, you can't do stuff like that. You're going to put our team in a bind.
Sure.
But when you have special guys, a J.J. Watt, a Snacks Harrison, a Dexter Lawrence, as Bobby Okereke comes in, Beavers and Michael McFadden and all the guys, Davis, you got to learn how to play with a guy like that because he's going to do stuff that you probably never seen a D-tackle do before. Good and maybe bad. You know what I'm saying? I'm talking about bad in terms of, okay, that's not fundamentally sound against a run play or a pass play.
But it gets the job done.
But he's going to get the penetration. If you learn how to play off him, your numbers are going to increase as well.
Interestingly, you got me thinking, Bobby Okereke has played with DeForest Buckner. So maybe it's not as bad of a transition, to your point, Jonathan. I'm not saying they're identical, he and Dexter Lawrence, but Buckner's a very unique interior defensive lineman that I'm sure does things, to your point, completely out of character, where Bobby had to adjust over the years.
Yeah, and if he understands that, like going in, like, all right, these guys, like at the end of the day, and especially Giants culture, Giants history, the D-line runs the Giants. Like, I'm talking about the entire team. If the Giants' success has always been predicated on their defensive line. That's why in 2016, when we went to the playoffs, look who we had on the defensive line. We had Snacks, we had Jonathan Hankins, we had JBP, Olivier. Like, we had guys on the defensive line. The Giants now, they have guys on the defensive line. They have an all-pro tackle. They have 2 young studs. They have a veteran leader in Leo. They have suitable guys inside that's rotating. The Giants right now, I'm telling you, their success is going to be predicated on the defensive line. And the guys that play right behind them, the linebackers, just get on board, bro. Get on board, and you will have some success as a linebacker if you understand how to play with those guys in front of you.
So before we move on, I'm dying to know, so what was the conclusion? What did Snacks tell J.T. Thomas after he called him out and questioned him?
Trust me, I shut that down before.
Oh, you did? Oh, so you knew it was going to blow up.
I said, bro, let him do his thing. Because at the end of the day, he may not be conventional. He may not be somebody you used to. But if he's causing havoc in front of you, just play off the havoc, bro. Just clean it up, And
that's something you adjusted to.
I had to adjust to it because I'm sitting there trying to play to my gap. My gap's it's no longer existing. And Snacks done washed the whole gap down. So now I know if it's a front side play and Snacks going to take my front side gap, I'm just going to be a little bit more patient and not so fast to play, because sometimes you need to get to that gap because you're out of alignment because of coverage responsibilities. You just play a little bit more patient, but that's the Snacks. It might be different with Dexter Lawrence. Then you just start adjusting your game to tighten up those holes on those run fits. Because if you got a guy that's just out there taking on double teams and he's moving your gap 2 to 3 feet, then just be a little bit more slow or faster, whatever the case may be. But you got to play off the guys in front of you. And I think that's why Xavier McKinney's so good, because he does a good job in playing behind the 6 or 7 guys that's in front of him on every given play.
Few reminders before we open up the phone lines here at 201-939-4513. Make sure you check out the Giants Huddle podcast. You can get that on your favorite podcast platform, or you can head to giants.com/podcast. Also, as we look ahead to the 2023 NFL schedule, it's officially out, and single-game tickets are on sale now. Don't miss the Giants at MetLife Stadium this season. You can visit giants.com/tickets to secure your seat. And on the subject of tickets, you can upgrade. You can take your fandom to the next level with a season ticket membership. Stay connected to the club all year round, not just on game days. Memberships are now available for the 2023 season. To learn more about all the exclusive member benefits, visit giants.com/tickets. Limited inventory is available. And the last thing on our docket, the Giants' official connected TV streaming app. It's called Giants TV. It brings original video content, game highlights on demand, and direct to Big Blue fans. Giants TV, it's free. It's on Apple TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, as well as the Giants mobile app. So we'll open up the phone lines. We'll get into some other takeaways from the coordinator media sessions earlier today. 201-939-4513. Lance Medow, Jonathan Casillas with you here. Thursday's edition of BBKL. Ricky is on Long Island joining us here. What's happening, Ricky? What do you got for us?
Hey, good afternoon, guys. JC, thanks for everything, man. It was a pleasure watching you here and other places.
Thank you, sir.
Had a couple of small things, 2 comments, really, and then about what you guys were just talking about with the green dot. So first, I just wanted to say I love Joe Shane. I feel like this guy is meant to be a GM. Every time he's asked about pushing money down the road, he says, I'd rather take my medicine now. Look at Galladay. He hasn't done anything with Leonard Williams. I'm sure he has things in place if he's got to make some space, but he's not really looking to kick the can ever. And the case in point should be the Kenny Galladay thing. I remember when he cut him, they were asking him about post-June 1st. He's like, yeah, no, if I could get rid of it now, I'd rather get rid of it now. And that's just how it seems like he's trying to do what he's doing. Like even the Waller trade, you already know we're not paying his whole contract for every year, so that's another reason that's kind of, you have a possibility of a top 3 tight end and you're not paying him like that yourself. So I just think he's making all the right moves, man. I hope that the hype is real, and I'm excited for this year based on everything that him and Dable and the rest of the coaching staff are doing. I'm a fan, man. Let me tell you.
Well, and I think part of the financial motivation there too, Ricky, is the fact that, remember, he walked into a situation was not necessarily a healthy cap situation. So I think like anybody else, you don't want to then repeat what you had to clean up. So that, I'm sure, is part of what is influencing him not wanting to kick the can continuously, because then you're just going to put yourself in the same exact situation that you inherited.
Yeah, exactly. And another thing on that type of comment, like, at the end of the day, I also know this. I know that when you have cap space left over, some of your cap space rolls over up to a certain amount.
Yep.
So it's always actually better. All these people, like, with void years and kicking the can, well, when every year you have $3 million, $5 million, that ain't helping you. If you have like 20 million, 25 million going into the year, let's say you spend 10 of it, you got 15 left over, you get a percentage of that, it helps you next year.
Well, you don't get a percentage. I mean, you carry it all over. Yeah, whatever is left over, Ricky, you carry over. There is no percentage. If you have 15 million left and they have to factor in the bonuses, they got to do all those mathematical equations. After the year, once they budget accordingly and they make sure that the books add up, then it rolls over to the following year.
But there's a cap on that, right? Like, you can't, if I had 70 million in space somehow this year, I can't carry 70 the next year, can I?
No, you can. I mean, there have been teams that have carried over sometimes $40-50 million in cap space, depending on how they break down their books.
I thought there was a cap and it wasn't the whole thing. That's even better. So that's what I mean. If you're healthy in cap space, it's more beneficial to you to always have space this year for your moves and whatever, but then some, because you could just keep adding to next year every year, right? Not obviously over the course of time. You're never going to always have 20, 25, 30 million. That'll never happen. But
because the goal is to pay your own players. I think the teams that wind up, if you notice trends that carry over cap space, more often than not, it's because they're not content with the guys on the roster. They don't want to pay them, so they have all this space to move on, and they're hoping that the draft picks pan out. That's more often than not the trend for the teams that do have a lot of cap space. For example, Jacksonville, prior to last year, had a lot of cap space. Well, what was the issue in Jacksonville? They needed to completely retool the roster because a number of their players didn't work out, and they wound up changing the coaching staff as a result.
Right, and there you go. Like I said, I agree with everything you just said. That's you look at the successful teams, that's usually part of their equation. Another thing you guys talked about, I just wanted to mention this. This is just more of a comment than anything, but a lot of people were down on Leonard Williams after last year, and I mean, Dexter Lawrence is all pro. I mean, I love this guy, but I just want everybody to keep in mind. Number one is the guy had 22, 24 pressures he's credited for. He was double. I saw a list that he was double the next guy on the list. You could argue that. I don't know. I remember where it came from. Was it PFF or? I don't know. It might have been one of these like Chat, GPT, whatever things going around nowadays. It might even have been NFL.com. But somebody ranked it. It was like the next two guys were Miami in a row. It was 1, 2, 3. The next two were Miami with like 8 or 9 apiece, and he's at over 20. And that kind of leads me, even if let's say that the whole total list wasn't accurate. If he had 8.5 sacks plus 22 pressures, keep in mind he would have more sacks if he wasn't always between the guards. How often do you see him line up not directly in front of the quarterback? Quarterback knows he's about to get leveled and gets rid of the ball. He throws it at somebody's feet. He throws it out of bounds where somebody's kind of nearby so he doesn't get a penalty. He starts running away so he's out of the tackle box, throws it away. That's why he gets so many pressures, I think, and as opposed to the super, like a Chris Jones had, 17 or 16 last year, but he's not always inside the guards. Dexter Lawrence literally is a nose. He's like hitting the center every play. So that's one thing. And I'd say, or coupled to that, I'd say that's why maybe Leonard Williams' numbers didn't look so good. Look at this guy. This guy's devastating you between your guards on every play. That's 22 pressure. That doesn't leave 8.5 sacks. That doesn't leave a whole lot from Leonard Williams from the inside either. That's at the end of the day, I feel like he might have took some of Leonard Williams' thunder there a little bit. And I'm not saying maybe Leonard Williams did have a slight down year, but I don't think that it's as bad as some people are making it out to be out there. I think it's more so that Dexter Lawrence had an impressive year, and that kind of took away a little of Leonard Williams' numbers.
Well, Leonard was also hurt, too, and appreciate the phone call, Ricky. Thanks for giving us a ring. I'm sure, you can obviously weigh in on that last point, Jonathan. I think, though, the injury is probably the biggest influence as to why the numbers did dip last year.
And his age, too. He's not young. I don't think Leonard Williams is in his prime right now. I think Dexter Lawrence, we're seeing prime Dexter Lawrence, And if you look at how offensive lines are structured, the interior of the offensive line is the most, I think, rigid. It's the strongest part of the defensive line. So it's very hard. That's why you don't see double-digit sack numbers from interior defensive linemen, because you have the center and the two guards there that help each other all the time. And if a guard's helping on one side, to a great pass rusher, which the Giants really didn't have a standout pass rusher consistently the whole entire year. So they were definitely focused in the interior. So now they're not only focused on interior and Dexter Lawrence, but they're focused on interior on Leonard Williams as well. So you got to think about defensive scheme, his age, and then also the injury. So it's a lot of factors, I think, that limit his numbers. And then this year, I think he's going to have less plays because of the addition of Nacho and Ashawn, but I think his productivity is going to go up. I think his percentage of making plays per play that he's in is going to go up because he's going to be a little bit more fresh. He's going to be antsy to get out there and actually make a play, and I think a lot of the focus is going to be shifted to Dexter Lawrence. So I think you look at Leonard Williams' numbers, I think his playtime might go down, but his numbers might go up, because of the defensive scheme that they run, also the extra support that they have in the interior of the defensive line, and I think the versatility of Leonard Williams, of not only him being inside the guards but also moving out to tackle to rush the passer.
It's interesting you brought that up. I'm bringing up his numbers. By the way, 8th season that he just finished, so he's entering year 9, to your point, in terms of age, wear, and tear. He's played, and I'll eliminate the 2019 season, which was the year that he split time with the Giants and the Jets. When he's been with one team over the course of a full season, he's played at least 74% of the snaps. So the reason why I want to throw those numbers out, do you see the number you're saying dipping below 75?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, wow, interesting. Okay, so you're telling me that, we could see like a 68%
I think
of the snap Leonard Williams?
You want to keep your guys fresh, and that starts with the older guys. That starts with the older guys in the room, keeping them fresh and limiting their plays, and I think I had a lot of value for the Giants because I was on a pitch count. People didn't know that, like, contractually wise, I was supposed to hit over a certain mark to hit all my incentives.
Yes.
And I was always on the fringe of that because I had a pitch count. Because when I was with Spagnuolo in New Orleans in 2012, I was hurt almost the whole year. And throughout my career, I kind of had injury problems, I was very productive in only playing 70% of the snaps for the New York Giants. But I was second on the team in tackles twice. Landon being number 1 those 2 years, and Landon played 100% of the snaps. And I was the only guy who, I wouldn't say the only guy, but I played 70% of the snaps, and I was second on the team in tackles. That kept my productivity high because I was fresh. I wasn't hurt. I wasn't banged up.
Yeah.
And I would come in hungry to make plays, you know what I mean? And, like, I used to curse Spags out. I told you to take me out on third downs. I used to curse him out, but that kept me going, So I expect Leo being in a similar type of situation, being I got here on year 7. Leo's in year 8, right? Going into year 9.
Going into year 9.
Going to year 9. So, right, exactly. So he's in the same predicament I was in when
Similar
I got
situation.
to New York. Older guy, probably best football behind, but he can have a great year because of they taking care of his snaps. He doesn't need to play 80% of the snaps. There's no reason for him to do that. Now you have capable guys to back him up, keeping him fresh for the plays that he in. So instead of giving 80%, 60 plays out of the game, he's giving 100% for 40 plays out of the game. You know what I mean? That's kind of the thought process I think that they will have for him. And I think that's why they're going to be able to pay him that much money, because he's going to be a valuable commodity to the New York Giants defense. And I think if they keep him fresh, his numbers are going to go up from last year.
Well, and that's the goal when you bring in also additional defensive linemen. You can rotate guys. I mean, look at what the Philadelphia Eagles do, Jonathan, right? We talk about the backups can start elsewhere. That's the luxury where you don't have to play anybody 80-some-odd percent of the snaps.
I'm interested to see all of those guys' percentage of plays for the Eagles. And I'm pretty sure none of those guys played over 80% of the snaps.
I'll bring it up. No, I think it's a good exercise.
Like Hassan Riddick probably played the most because he had the most sacks, but he might have even been more limited than that. You keep a guy fresh and bring him in once every 3 plays, and he understands that that's his role. He's going to come in like his hair's on fire. He's going to be thinking about these left tackles and his right tackles, his moves. He's not worried about playing a run. Like, there has his advantages to having basically specialists that come in for certain situations. And if Giants can get to that where they have 8 guys rotating on the defensive line that understands their role and fully embrace their role, that's when you have a fully disruptive defensive line all over.
Well, I think your takeaway was on point. I mean, I'm bringing up the numbers here. I'm just going to go through the names.
Yep.
Josh Sweat, 53% of the snaps. Brandon Graham, 43% of the snaps.
Wow, and they both had double-digit sacks.
I'm going to throw out Ndamukong Suh because he came late in the season. Derek Barnett was hurt all year, so I'm going to remove him. Fletcher Cox, 64%. Javon Hargrave, who just joined the Niners, 64% of the snaps. Milton Williams, rotational defensive lineman, 36% of the snaps. Jordan Davis was a little bit hurt, but he wound up only playing 20% of the snaps. Linval Joseph was a late arrival. We'll remove him. Reddick, to answer your question, played 74% of the snaps. So he played the most.
I told you.
It seems like you know a thing or two
A
about
little
football.
bit.
Just a tad. Yeah, just a tad. Yeah. No, but your point is well taken. And that's why, when we talk about it as if it sounds like it's just generic cliched lines, no, there's validity behind it. The more guys you bring in, then you can make sure you're not wearing these guys down so that in the fourth quarter, Jonathan, they're huffing and puffing.
Yeah, they're fresh. And that's why the Eagles' defensive line was so scary all year, because they had a lot of guys that were coming in the game giving quality reps. They weren't just bodies that were coming in there like, all right, we're going to give this guy a rest. No, it's your time. Go make a play. And I feel like the Giants are setting themselves up to be in that situation. Bringing in guys, bringing in pass rushers, keeping Xavier Zimenez in, keeping him in as one of those edge rushers. The Giants,
third pass rusher.
Right, the third pass. The Giants now, they're building that defensive line unit that you can rotate through and keep guys fresh. And hopefully the 2 defensive tackles that played an alarmingly a lot of plays last year, you can cut those numbers down. I don't want to see Dexter Lawrence playing 90% of the snaps. I don't think he needs to do that. I think you could take that number down to 80. I think Leo, whatever his numbers was last year, take that down 10%. And then now you got in a couple guys that give you quality reps when they're in, and they'll take off pressure so Leo can have a better year. And he can be more fresh in the fourth quarter or sometimes the fifth quarter.
Well, it's funny. I was bringing up the 2016 team when you were going over and complaining about your snap count, but saying that your tackles were in a respectable manner. That season, Olivier Vernon played 93% of the snaps.
Yeah, I bet.
And I remember talking about it, and even Spags had referred to it. There wasn't an overwhelming amount of depth at pass rush. It was JPP and Vernon.
Yep.
God forbid those guys got hurt.
Yep.
I mean, let's face it. You didn't have a lot of meat and potatoes behind it. So that's why Spags, I felt, was forced. He couldn't take those guys off the field.
Yep.
But when you don't have to put yourself in that position, it's night and day. And you wound up, just for the record.
I don't know, real quick, before you talk about me.
Sure.
Which I love.
I mean, that should be the biggest priority. I can't believe you're interrupting me. I'm giving you your flowers here. Yeah.
I feel like his numbers weren't as good as they probably could have been because he was playing so many snaps.
Well, and that's what I was getting at.
Olivier, he was good against the run, but he's not a big guy. He was just strong. He was maybe 250. He was really strong. But, bro, if you're playing first and second down and you're going against Trent Williams and he's blocking you on run plays, how are you going to be fresh for the third down passing
It's going to take a toll.
You know what I mean? So, like I said, cutting numbers down usually gets production up because you got guys that are more fresh coming in. You got a whole new batch of guys coming in on third down. The offense looks like, oh my gosh, like these guys coming in, running in, yelling, like that. It's a little demoralizing as well.
100%, sure.
So you got guys that's playing 30% of the snaps on the Eagles and they get double-digit sacks. Like, bro, this guy's fresh. I see him every 3 plays, and he's coming in like hitting me with all kind of moves I've never seen before.
Like, what the heck's going on here? I'm getting tired. We're on the 10th play of the drive. This guy's playing like all of a sudden he arrived in the game. Well, and you look at also, I think hockey is a good analogy here because you got me thinking about the constant line changes, right? In hockey, there's a reason why they can't leave those lines in for, more than about a minute and a half to 2 minutes.
Is that the rotation?
Oh, yeah. If you look at the hockey line changes and how quickly, you'll have a good shift for maybe about a minute 45, 2 minutes, and they're getting those guys off the ice.
Yeah. I love the way they substitute, too.
Yeah.
I remember the first time I was at a hockey game, it was in, I think, Arizona, whatever the team is out there.
Phoenix Coyotes?
I was out there.
Yes.
And I watched them substitute, and there's this guy skating off the ice and coming back in. I was like, hold on, what's going on right now? What's going on? What was that? It was like, oh, they're substitute. That's how they substitute? No
Line change.
timeout?
Oh, no. Well,
no between plays? I guess that is between plays, but not really, though, because that puck is moving.
I was going to say, if you don't clear the puck out, you're going to be on the wrong end of that.
I think it's interesting.
Yes.
Hold on, we were talking about me. Can you go back to me again?
Sure, 100%. I'm so glad you got us back on topic because I was going off on a whole tangent, me and my hockey and other sports analogies. So I was looking this up. You and Keenan Robinson were both in the same territory during that 2016 season. You both had 71% of the snaps. And you were on the high side that season. Everybody else, I'm looking through the entire defense here. Harrison, Snacks played 60%. Hankins, 67%. I mentioned Vernon was the outlier. JPP, 71%. And then the other guys are pretty much in the secondary, which to me doesn't relate. But when you combine the front seven, you wound up playing. Vernon was ahead of you. You were a slight percentage point ahead of JPP. So kudos to you. We'll pat you on the back. You wound up playing, in the front seven, you played the second most snaps, percentage-wise.
That makes sense.
Right behind Vernon.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
In 2016 was my best statistical year of my career, basically. But then I understood who I was. I understood how to play with that defensive line in front of me. And a
lot more seasoning.
And I would talk to, who did I talk to recently? It was a linebacker. Was it Levante David? I think it was Levante about playing with JPP. Yeah. Right?
Former Tampa Bay Buccaneer.
Yeah. So,
sure.
JP left here, went down to Tampa,
Yep.
and me and Levante, I was in Tampa years ago before Tom Brady and all that.
You laid the foundation.
Years.
There would be no Super Bowl unless they didn't bring you into the organization first. That's how we circle that.
Levante, a good friend of mine, and I told him, I warned him about JPP. I say, first of all, JPP is a monster. He's a beast. I said, but sometimes I don't know if he can hear correctly. So you might have to go reiterate messages to him, and then also sometimes if you get the message to him, he might not do it. And I love JPP.
Yes.
But Robert Ayers, he was here too. Yeah. Robert Ayers, we called him Rogue because he would just go rogue and do his own thing. It's like, you got a, two-way move, but you got to win outside. He will end up inside somehow, some way, but as you play linebacker, you start learning how to play with these guys because these, like Robert Ayers, he's a guy who can get double sacks. JPP, of course, his history here in New York, he's a guy who had 3 sacks one game, an interception, and a touchdown. Like, he's a guy that can totally disrupt the game. As a linebacker, you start learning how to play with those guys, and you make them a lot better, and they make you a lot better once you learn how to play with them.
Sure.
And these guys, Kayvon Thibodeau, Ojulari, O'Shane Zimenez, all the interior defensive linemen, I'm sure they all have their little quirks about them that are all different, right? You may have Nacho. He might, when you say have the B gap, he's going to be in that B gap, or Dexter Lawrence. If he has a double team, bro, he's going to win to the right side probably most of the time.
Their tendencies.
You know what I mean? So you start learning this stuff. You can't learn it during OTAs. You can't really learn it during training.
You don't
camp.
have the pads on, too.
You're going to learn it, not even in practice. You're going to learn it in the game situations. So that first year for us, the New York Giants, 2015, we were just learning how to play with each other. And then they bring in Snacks. That first half of that 2016 season, I had to learn, okay, Snacks is going to do this stuff. Robert Ayers is going to go rogue. JPP, you might have to repeat it, and if you repeat it, you might still not do the right thing. Like, you start learning how to play with these guys, and then that, as the season progresses, as long as the continuity stays there, you will start learning how to play with these guys. And I think as the year progresses, yes, they're light years ahead of they were last year because this is the second year for most of the guys in his defense besides the new guys.
That continuity factor.
And now you're going in, so it's going to be a year. I think they're going to start a little bit faster, and I think before the middle of the year, you're going to see this defense really get together, and maybe those rush numbers maybe start out a little bit higher, but then they drop as the year go on, as they start figuring out how to play with each other.
201-939-4513 is the telephone number. Let's head back to the lines. Raymond is in Middletown, joining us here on BBK. What's happening, Raymond?
How we doing, guys?
We're doing all right. What's on your mind?
I'm curious because the last 2 episodes you guys talked about over-unders, and I think a key point that was brought up a lot was, like, depending on injury. Azeez Ojulari, Darren Waller, Daniel Jones, Saquon Barkley. They've all had, like, key injuries that have, like, hurt production as far as the Giants go. And I'm curious Is that something you guys worry about, or do you guys think the Giants have built enough depth with like Matt Breida and Eric Gray, Daniel Bellinger, or anybody behind Azeez Ojulari? I would even say Paris Campbell, too, as a big signing that we made. Do you think the Giants have enough wide receiver depth to, I don't know, I guess keep up production if key players like that drop from injury?
Well, I think that's the quest for every team, and we'll answer that question and let you go on that note and appreciate the phone call. I'll let you hop in first, Jonathan, because I know you wanted to say something.
I heard you about to say, that is when we talked about offseason, I think, goals for the Giants, the number one thing was sign Daniel Jones. My number two thing was get depth all over. It wasn't re-signing Saquon. It wasn't finding that number one receiver. My number two thing after signing Daniel Jones was providing depth for the entire team. You got to bring in more players. You got to bring in guys. You got to bring in more DBs, more running backs, more tight ends. You got to bring in guys to make the whole roster better, because the fact of the matter is somebody's going to get hurt. If not, a whole bunch of people are going to get hurt. Knock on wood.
It's the nature of the beast.
Knock on wood, but you got to be prepared. Now, Giants are pretty much situated at every position to have suitable backups, even if one or two guys go down. And you look at Daniel Jones, I think one of the most solid backups in the NFL is Tyrod Taylor. If Daniel Jones go down, Tyrod Taylor comes in, I don't think you miss a beat. Arguably, you might get better. Tyrod Taylor is a phenomenal quarterback in the NFL. And then you look at the roster, the whole roster now has depth now. I think maybe the only questionable spot is that linebacker because of lack of experience. And defensive back too. And defensive back as well.
Cornerbacks.
You got me a defensive back as well. Yeah. But that adds value to your overall team, and also now you got quality players that are possibly starters playing on special teams, which makes your special teams better. So look, you have a point. There are guys that, look, if Saquon gets hurt, don't think the run game is not going to struggle. It may not, but most likely it will. This is a phenomenal talent.
Sure.
Darren Waller gets hurt.
I was just going to say that.
He's a guy.
There's some guys that are very difficult to replace.
He's a guy that we don't have. Yeah. There's no one else like him in the NFL, let alone on this team. So you definitely expect something to change or happen or a drop off statistically for that position if some guy goes down, for sure. Andrew Thomas, if he goes down, the Giants are probably going to be in trouble. Let's be real about this.
Sure.
If he goes down, the Giants are going to be in trouble. Right? We don't have another left tackle like him because there's not another left tackle like him in the league.
And you can't afford to keep a guy like that on the roster anyway.
You know what I'm saying? So there's definitely crucial positions that it's not really – there's no position in the league more, I think, valuable offensively than that left tackle position, besides the quarterback, of course. If you lose that guy, I'm sorry, there's not backups in the league that play left tackle that are just ready to go. It'd probably be another right tackle that moves over and then a right tackle steps up. But, that's a crucial position. So there are definitely positions, to his point, that if somebody goes down, the Giants will be in trouble. And left tackle probably is number one, I think. I think that's number one.
Yeah, and I think Darren Waller, your point is well taken. And it's also, I'll take it a step further, Jonathan. There are a number of players on a roster that are irreplaceable, which is what we're talking about.
Yep.
But also, I think it depends on how you utilize that player within the schemes. For example, if Travis Kelce went down for the Chiefs, could Andy Reid and Matt Nagy, their new OC, could they tweak things? Sure. I mean, I'm sure they have the track record. Just like I have confidence, Brian Dable and Mike Kafka, look at how they developed talent last year.
Yep.
They'll make changes, but you're now going to have a very different feel and look for your system. Meaning you're not throwing out a guy like Darren Waller who demands double teams, who has that size, who has that wingspan. That is going to make defenses think. No disrespect to Daniel Bellinger. I like him, and he certainly is bulked up. And Bellinger, I think, was a really solid player last year. But defenses are not treating Daniel Bellinger the way that they're treating Darren Waller. And that was your point about Saquon, too. So there are a few guys, to get back to the caller's question, be very hard to replace them. I think overall, though, you feel good about a number of positions because what happened, for example, at wide receiver last year, right? The Giants, they lost volume at that position. And then you got to the point where you had to go to the practice squad to hope that you could bring guys in. You bring in Paris Campbell, you draft Jalen Hyatt, Wan'Dale Robinson is back. We'll see what happens with Jamison Crowder, Colin Johnson.
Yep.
I think overall the group is stronger so that in the event you lose one or two guys, you don't necessarily maybe have to go to the practice squad. You have guys currently who make the 53-man roster that you feel good about. I think the same thing about the defensive front, which we were talking about earlier. A'Shaun Robinson and Nacho. You didn't have that type of depth up front with respect to guys that could stop the
And
run.
that's why Dexter played so many snaps last year. That's why Leo played so many snaps last year.
Exactly.
Which I don't think was advantageous for them.
Now, for example, let's say you didn't bring in A'Shawn Robinson and Nacho, or maybe you had one of the two. We're talking about now DJ Davidson, who didn't even get through his entire rookie year. It's fair to say there's question marks, right, about DJ Davidson. We don't know what he brings to the table. Or Jordan Riley, who you just drafted in the 7th round. He didn't play one NFL snap. The conversation, Jonathan, is a lot different.
Different, for sure.
Okay? So I think that's what you should take away, that the group overall has more substance, but it still depends on the quality of the player that is going down when it's all said.
And then, like not only just the quality, but where it happens. Like I said, thinking about who could we not afford to lose, my immediate thought was Andrew Thomas. Like as I was kind of answering this question and going through it, and I'm kind of going through positions like, yeah, if Saquon gets hurt, I mean, if he doesn't play, if he doesn't sign it, I think the Giants will be okay. They'll figure it out. You know what I mean?
Well, we'll see what Eric Gray provides.
But that left tackle position, I don't think any team. You go through the whole team,
it's hard.
The whole NFL league. You take that star left tackle away, the team is going to be completely different. Because now, look, the most talented athletes I think in the world are rushing the passer.
And every team has multiple
Every
guys.
team, like Nick Bosa.
You can't hide an offensive lineman.
The guy from Cleveland, I watched him doing 360 dunks between his. Bro, what are we talking about? Garrett? Oh, my
Myles
God.
Garrett, I was going to be like.
Bro, these guys are JPP. We were hanging out for my birthday last year in Tampa. He was dancing. He was going all the way down to the ground with his butt to the ground with his knees. And I'm just looking like, oh, my knees. JPP is 6'6".
What was he doing, the limbo?
He's 6'6", and he can bend like that. Bro, these guys are the freakiest athletes in the world, and they have motors, and they can go. You better have a guy out there that can block them guys, especially on the blind side of a quarterback. So you lose a guy like Andrew Thomas, the whole offense might go to, whatever.
Well, no, we can imagine the vocabulary that you were going to throw in there. This is the PG-13 version of Big Blue Kickoff Live. Rated R will be posted a little bit later on YouTube. Make sure you check that out. We had to beep it out accordingly.
I got some stuff yesterday. There was like... It was like, I don't know if you could be announcing because you curse too much. I said, I don't curse on the air. I don't do none of that stuff. But you see, when I was about to do it, what happened?
Well, that's why you were hitting your self-edit button. So, listen, you have very good discipline for a broadcaster.
I try.
That should be a positive trait.
I'm from Jersey, man. I'm a sailor.
Well, as long as you take the jersey out of the equation when we're on here for Big Blue Kickoff Live, we will have no issue with respect to that. Jonathan, always a blast. Enjoyed the conversation.
Always, brother.
All right, that is going to wrap up things for us here on Thursday's edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live. A reminder, it's part of the Giants platforms everywhere, as well as Giants.com/podcast. We'll be up and running again on Friday, 12:30 p.m. Eastern, for the latest edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live. For Jonathan Casillas, I'm Lance Medow. Stay locked to Giants.com for all the latest, and we'll speak to you Friday right here on BBKL. Have a good one.